Hello, everyone, and welcome to In Time. We are here with breaking news. 3 rockets have landed and struck, as far as we can tell, the U.S. Embassy in Iraq. One was a direct hit and hit the cafeteria. No word yet on injuries or casualties of any kind. This is honestly, there was a little iffy on whether or not we're going to cover this as breaking news. I think it's worth it for a number of reasons. It's not as scary as it may sound. First of all, this actually came from an Iraqi, a militia group. Now, it is an Iranian-based militia group. This group has been attacking U.S. interests in the area, specifically in Iraq, for a while. They are also an anti-government group. They want the Iraqi government out. Now, these attacks, there have been actually, I believe, 3 such attacks already in this month. The frequency of attacks has been increasing. It's been increasing ever since we got into it with the Iranians. Do you remember something about that, Ansgar? I don't.
Problems with Iran? No, not this country.
Doesn't ring a bell.
Not at all.
That wasn't a fun broadcast week. So now this was an Iranian-backed militia group. Now, in cases like this is what everybody's fighting a proxy war with everybody. Jon Stewart did this marvelous thing on proxies and basically showed that if you follow all the proxies, the U.S. is in a proxy war with the U.S. in the Middle East because we're just backing so many people. But when the Soviets were in Afghanistan, we wanted them out and we wanted them to suffer a terrible loss. So one of the things we did was we armed a militia group in Afghanistan. That group was called the Taliban. We armed them with specifically anti-helicopter and anti-aircraft missiles. We armed them with guns. We armed them with ammunition. We armed them with everything we could. And while they were not in a position to specifically defeat the Soviet Union, what they were in a position to do was to just drag them down into a quagmire until they gave up, essentially deliver to the USSR the same thing that we had for Vietnam. This was a US-backed group. The Taliban, we've all heard of before. Eventually, they got so sick of us, they turned and used the very weapons we gave them on us. We also gave Saddam Hussein the chemical weapons that he used on the Kurds, killing 10,000 of his own people. He got those chemical weapons from us, something we like to just kind of gloss over.
Yeah. Pay no attention to that. I mean, that's not what's important here. Yeah, yep. Exactly.
So we've gotten in a lot of trouble with this kind of meddling, and what's ended up happening was that we had hold on. So we backed the Taliban. Everybody knew we were backing the Taliban. Everybody knew we were giving them weapons. But because we were not the ones firing on the Soviet Union, it was just an implement of the Cold War, and there's nothing they could do to actually prove it. We made sure we got all of the weapons were actually basically Soviet-made weapons. When possible, we would get them either through we got them through Israel, who got them from another intermediate. It was enough. But in the end, all the weapons that we supplied really couldn't be traced back to us. Everybody knew we were doing it. Couldn't be proven. That's what's happening here. We know that the Iranians are backing these militia groups, and these militia groups are attacking U.S. targets, but we can't really prove it. So now is there a possibility that there is?
Sorry, I was going to say, I assume these weapons, these Soviet weapons, are when the Soviet Union collapsed, a lot of the generals, before they fled the Soviet Union, sold off weapons of war, and these things have been circulating in particularly the Middle East ever since.
They have, and in fact, this gets into another really interesting thing. Although I'm getting a report, at least, that people are having difficulty hearing you. So let's hope that gets. We are on a new system, and we're still working out the kinks. Do you remember the very first day we broadcast?
I do.
That was a day before we were scheduled to do our first show. I was testing the interface, and we had agreed we'd do live breaking news, but we weren't ready to go. We were testing the interface. All of a sudden, breaking news, 6 shot in Baltimore. I was just like, should I call Ansgar? Let's just fuck it. We're going live.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. So
it's kind of like this.
Yeah, this is
tomorrow was supposed to be our first official test of the new system, but here we are because breaking news happened.
So we can't get a break. Oh my God. So hopefully they can hear you. We'll get that under control. Thank you guys for letting us know. So not only that, but actually, one of the things was in the May 2nd, 1992 declaration to the UN, Iraq declared its weapons of mass destruction. Iraq had weapons of mass destruction. This is irrefutable. And this is one thing that people gloss over. They did have them, but they were under UN seal. They declared them, and then the question was, did they have undeclared weapons of mass destruction? That's what we were interested in. But the what is HTX, high explosives, all sarin gas, all this other stuff that they had at Mustafa and 2 other sites. We rolled through those when we invaded Iraq, and we just were like, there's a little plastic O-ring right on the thing keeping the door closed. No problem. That'll be fine. Nobody's going to get the sarin gas behind the O-ring. It's just a little, it was, you know what I'm talking about? Those little plastic seals that just said don't open under penalty of UN, and there was like a UN plastic seal on it. So that kept the weapons out of hands. And I think it was 80% of the explosives and IEDs were from sites that we failed to secure. Be that as it may. So a lot of these weapons are floating around in the Middle East, but a lot of them are going from Iran to these groups in order to, in essence, in part, to topple the Iraqi government. This is one reason I suspect that the Iraqi government was so quick to say, let's get rid of the Americans. There are right now a significant number of protests in Iraq against the government, anti-government protesters. There were 19 injured, I believe, in the last, no, that may have been killed. Let me check on that number. But certainly a number have been injured and or killed in various protests. There was a protest today. There have been protests for the last week saying that they want to overthrow the government because this is essentially the government that we put in. Now, it was an elected government. They have said that they want us out. We've said we're not going to do it. But nonetheless, they associate this government with the U.S. They want that government gone. So they are protesting against the government. And at the same time, these groups are attacking our interests. So this attack has happened. Attacks like this have happened before. None have successfully struck the embassy. So again, today, the embassy was struck by at least 1 rocket. I know at least 3 were sent. It may be more than. I'm a little fuzzy. There's a lot of information coming in that we're trying to clarify right now. But at a minimum, 1 rocket struck the cafeteria, and and in the protests, I guess there was 100 injured in the protests, and at least 1 fatality is the information that we're getting now. So we'll try to confirm that. But so, like I said, not a lot of people have been covering these protests, but why they're important is because they want to get rid of the government. The government, in order to stay, is making concessions, and among those, it's getting rid of us. Now there's a problem. As we've mentioned before, the government has demanded that the U.S. withdraw all forces. In fact, all military forces of any foreign country leave. We've said no. That puts them in a difficult position. The U.S. Embassy is not covered by that arrangement. The U.S. Embassy is covered by a separate arrangement through the UN in which the hosting nation is required by law to defend our embassy. It is not a military installation. It is U.S. soil. So any attack on that is considered an attack on the U.S. That's why the Iranians won't do it. The Iranians are much more likely to attack an air base than they are the embassy. So although the air base is technically our soil too, that was a biggie when John McCain was, because John McCain was not born in the U.S. actually any more than Obama, the Kenyan Obama.
No, right. Yeah.
Yeah, that was McCain wasn't born in the U.S. He just wasn't. He was born on an air base. I forget in what country, but it wasn't in the U.S. But, you know, at any rate.
It's U.S. We consider the U.S. because it's a U.S. air base.
I'm not bitter. I am not bitter. Don't mention McCain again, please. No! Sorry. It's been a long day. Okay. Didn't mean to snap. I love you, Ansgar.
By the way, I'm also reading that apparently rocket attacks in this green zone where this embassy was are actually rather common.
I think they're averaging about 3 a week. So that's why, I mean, again, one of the reasons I wanted to cover this as breaking news was because in some ways it's not a huge story. Because it's been going around. A lot of people go, oh my God, there was an attack that hit the embassy. Yeah, they've been trying to hit the embassy for quite some time. averaging, again, 3 attacks a week. This was not by Iran. It was by a proxy, same thing that we did with the Taliban,
Mhm.
but it was not Iran itself. So this is not renewing tensions with Iran. This isn't good, but this isn't a complete renewal of everything that was going on. So I cannot make that clear enough. The fact that they hit,
Right.
and the fact that this actually does put the government in a bit of a pickle, because they are required to defend us. And once it hits the embassy, they're not required to defend our air bases. And they're not required to defend the green zone. They are required to defend the embassy. They don't want to defend anything of ours. This is the time they're trying to get rid of us. And the question is, are they going to
Mhm.
sit there and say, well, if you're not going to leave, we're not going to protect your embassy, which is a violation of law, but I can see them doing that. Or are they going to try to expel the embassy, expel our ambassadors? That would be a significant problem. We want to keep up diplomatic relations there. We should keep up diplomatic relations there, even if they completely overturn the government. I don't think anybody knows what's going to happen next, but I see that being one of the potential dominoes, and I see that where there were. So that's why that's really the reason this is breaking news, is because now their government is in a pickle. The embassy's been hit. They
Right.
are required to respond. So, and I think we've got a
Um,
few super chat. Yeah, Ansgar, do you want to?
we have one super chat, but real quick, I was going to ask, why is it though that if it's a proxy, we know it's a proxy, we know that you know what I mean, Iran, it's a proxy for Iran. Why does that matter? That we can't prove it. Why would this not ramp up hostilities?
That's a really good question. Um, and actually, I will save the super chat until, because we do have one other story to cover, which is a particularly sad one. So we'll go into that. But it's because it doesn't matter what we know for the most part. What matters is what we can prove to the rest of the world. If we just attack Iran, there are a lot of countries that do. And in fact, the Gulf of Tonkin was an interesting incident. It is what started the Vietnam War. The Vietnamese attacked one of our, I want to say, destroyers in the Gulf of Tonkin and tried to sink it. May even have successfully. I don't remember the Gulf of Tonkin incident all that well. But what I do remember was immediately after that, we're like, hey, active war, it's on, go, boom, and we attacked. Thing is, that was probably faked. And the evidence right now suggests Gulf of Tonkin never happened, and or we sank our own ship just to
Oh
start a war.
wow.
Yeah, just to start Vietnam, Gulf of Tonkin. The other one was, of course, the war with Mexico, in which we acquired New Mexico and huge swaths of Texas. We also faked. That one we know for a fact. So we instigated an attack. We then we actually said we had been attacked. When we didn't, we responded, started the war. Nowadays, in an information age, that's a lot harder to get away with. And we become pariahs in the rest of the world if we just attacked anybody we wanted to. So we need evidence. Most of the world knows it's happening, but they'd still demand evidence anyway. We wouldn't be able to provide it, and would become pariahs for just attacking them without, quote, without provocation. So it's a question of how much plausible deniability do they have, and do they think they can get away with? Because, frankly, the rest of the world could know for a fact that they're doing this, and most of them probably do, but because they don't want a loss of life, because they don't want a war, they will demand evidence, and they will hold it against us if we attack, even knowing, because we're the U.S. We should be able to take a couple of blows. So I think that's the general thinking. So unless we can prove it and say, look, this is what they've done, then they're like, oh God, you guys are really going to wipe Iran off the map? Really? Nobody
Yeah.
wants that. So without the proof, they wouldn't let us do it, and we're not going to
Pe-
find the proof. That's really hard to do.
People often seem to forget that things like the rule of law still actually apply when you're talking about geopolitics. It's not a simple matter of we want to do something, we've got the bigger stick, so we get to do it. Especially in the age where there are nuclear superpowers. You can't simply you know you can't get around the rule of law. And one of the reasons you can't get around the rule of law is because you actually need the cooperation of, and you need the not just the cooperation, you need your own reputation intact to be able to get things done on the world stage, and violating, that those laws that we've all sort of agreed to, harms that reputation. It sort of slowly, degrades it. And pretty soon, there's nothing you can do on the world stage. You can't get anything done. You can't create peace between other countries. You can't get economic deals. You can't protect your people. You can't really do anything on the world stage once you've eroded enough of your own integrity. No one is going to trust you.
Yep.
And you can't have partnerships with other countries.
No, exactly. And we're having an issue with the interface where each get this is great. This is time for my close-up. All right, so let's see. I think that's a very good explanation. Oh, there we are. That's a very good explanation. So thank you for that. Was there anything else I think that we needed to cover on that? I don't know if, because we do unfortunately have one other thing, and I think we'll lead into it with the super chat, which is just unfortunately just some unfortunate news. But long story short on this, they've been averaging 3 attacks a week. This is the first attack to hit. That's really why it's breaking news, and because this now forces the Iraqi government into an awkward position. They are trying to be as anti-U.S. as possible. There are multiple rather large protests going on. At the last one that we heard of, 100 injured and 1 dead in the last anti-government protest. The government, these are headed by Muqtada al-Soutter, and he is desperately trying to get rid of the government, which he considers U.S.-backed, despite the fact that they are trying to get rid of us. So this puts them in a little bit of a pickle. They are going to have to defend our base, our embassy. They don't really want to. So, and that may be one reason why the embassy itself is being targeted, although our embassies are really considered targets in the Middle East anyway. They don't necessarily go after military targets, but after the embassies. So hopefully that will be the end of it. If there's anything else, we'll let you know. But I keep an eye now for what the Iraqi government does and what al-Sadr does to try to put them in a real bind. And I think that's what he's trying to do by hitting the base. And we'll keep an eye on those protests. But other than that, I think everything's okay. So did you want to cover the super chat?
Yeah, sure. So we got a $1.99 super chat from Mothra J Disco. By the way, awesome, huge Godzilla fan. That is a fantastic that's a fantastic name for YouTube. Rest in peace, Kobe. #GOAT. So for those of you who might not have heard, Kobe Bryant was in a helicopter with, I believe, 4 other people, and that helicopter has crashed and killing all on board. It's, obviously tragic.
And one of the others was his 13-year-old daughter.
Which, that is just absolutely awful. Absolutely awful.
So Kobe Bryant, he was 41, died today when his helicopter crashed, killing him and his daughter. He was considered one of the best NBA players in history, and has died today. Helicopters are, unfortunately, actually about the most dangerous machines you can be in. So the airplane is safest. I guess a school bus is too. I learned that. I assume that a tank is, as long as nobody's shooting at you. I vote tank.
We should all just drive tanks to work.
Remember that guy who actually, there was a movie about the guy who had his own Sherman tank, and then he goes on a whole thing, but that actually happened in L.A. Were you anywhere in the vicinity when that happened? Do you remember that one? Oh, that was San Diego.
It happened in San Diego, and what it was is a guy snuck onto a I think it was, I don't remember if it was a National Guard base or a U.S. Army base. And I guess he had some training, he had some knowledge of the, but yeah, he stole the vehicle, went on a rampage. Now, it wasn't armed, so he was just like running things over, but it's amazing the
Yeah,
amount of
still a
carnage you can
tank.
cause. Exactly, the tank. And the only reason he was stopped, is he made the mistake of trying to go over the concrete divider on the freeway, and he popped a track and got stuck, and that's what finally got him.
Yeah, well, I was trying to take out a bridge. I think he was hitting the bridge and just kept rolling. It was, well, I don't know why I wanted to take down the bridge. You're in a tank. You don't need to take down a bridge. Um, yeah.
Yeah.
I can only imagine that call. Like if you're the police officer, like, yeah, we have a tank going down Interstate 19. Does anyone have any idea how to put this thing down? If I were the dispatcher, I'd be like, sorry, I didn't catch that call. Put it on to somebody else.
Well, can you imagine the being told? I mean, because it's all these standard operating procedures they were using. Okay, we need you to set up your cars in a barricade here, and you're like going, he's in a tank.
You use your car. I'm going to the beach. I'm gonna chillax. Was the same thing I always kind of remember by those guys. This was LA. I think it was. I don't remember if it was initially 4 and they got down to 2, or if it was just the 2 men who were in full body armor, and you could see the bullets
4
bouncing
men.
off them after yeah. And
Yeah.
and then they broke into a weapons store and they robbed it. It's just the cops robbed the store. They're like, sorry, we need better ammo for this.
Within a week, there were new regulations that put high caliber semi-automatic rifles in cops. Now what happened, what they did was they put it in the trunks of their vehicles, the police, but only a certain ranked officer would have to be there to actually unlock the weapons. But they made, the idea was just in case they do have the weapons to respond next time, kind of a thing.
Okay, so what I'm seeing now is that it was actually Kobe Bryant, his daughter, the pilot, and actually 6 other passengers. But I think so that would be, I guess, 9 people total in the helicopter. Helicopters. One of the problems with a helicopter is a tremendous number of moving parts, and if either of the rotors fail, the helicopter is going down. Now, even with you can do what's called an auto rotation, which is as the helicopter fails and it falls down, you can actually get the rotors to spin just from the wind coming up. As you're going down, there's enough wind coming up, it'll actually cause them to spin a bit. It's called auto rotation, and you can soft crash with that, but that's assuming your tail rotor isn't. I mean, there's any number.
Yeah.
It's very hard to get that, and I've been told that with auto rotation, helicopters are reasonably safe. They're basically, yeah. Enough joking. It's obviously a sad loss. So I think tomorrow we've got.
I was going to say he survived by his wife and 3 daughters, including Capri, who was just born last June.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's not. Anyways, our condolences, obviously, to all of the family members and all of the fans, because he was. We talked earlier about human treasures, and I think he was one.
Yeah.
So tomorrow we will be doing. We got a busy week next week. Tomorrow we're going to do sort of a recap show. We're going to cover. There's been. Obviously, there is a flu outbreak, which is getting larger in China. It's been in the U.S. It's come to a few places. We will be covering that. There is an update on the non sequitur situation. We covered that, a YouTube channel that we've been covering, and it looks like that has finally come to mostly an end, although that thing just keeps almost dying. It's dragging on and on. But
let's just say, unless someone does something really stupid, it's finally over.
Yeah, so it's not going to end for a little while, I suspect. This was the show that wouldn't die. Oh my God! But so we'll cover that one, and then oh yeah, our president's being impeached. But honestly, I wish there had been breaking news on that. There hasn't been. It's nobody's changing their minds. Everybody's entrenched. It's not going anywhere. If you want, listen. If you want, oh yeah, we have breaking news on the impeachment. If you want to get it, go get like just a blank sheet of paper and look at it, and it will be about as entertaining as anything we have to offer on this impeachment. Nothing. It's just
It is
there was a reprimand.
basically been as predictable as it could possibly be. You know what I mean? If you could
Yep.
have chosen the most predictable outcome for the way this would all go down, that's exactly what's happening.
I think it was Dave who had said that this was actually going. This was spectacular. It was the best and worst. It was the best of everything and the worst of everything. The Democrats are presenting a spectacular case. They're presenting a really good case. They're presenting it well. They're presenting everything you'd expect. They're doing a good job. The Republicans don't care. It's exactly what they expected. There's nothing new they haven't heard. And they're like, yeah, we don't care. So, yeah, nothing's going to happen with that. Anyways, we'll cover that. Nothing tomorrow. Anyway, then what else do we have on the calendar?
So we've got, let me go to our calendar real quick. That would actually probably be helpful. Okay. So, Tuesday we've got Batman versus Captain America. We're going to be exploring moral systems and, ethics and, really getting a deep dive into philosophy and, once again, how it, connects into, our modern mythology, which I think is going to be really cool. Wednesday, the 29th, these are both at our usual 2 p.m. Eastern. We're going to be covering what we're Disney and the art monopoly. Essentially, what are the effects of repercussions of having so many large companies like Disney owning most of the most influential art in our culture. And then the week
As long
after
as they don't
that,
take Star Wars, I'm cool. I'm cool as long as they don't take Star
oh
Wars.
wow, I think I got some bad news, but we'll save it for then.
All right, cool.
All right. So Monday the 3rd, we've got our patron hangout. So those of you who support the show as patrons, we will be doing a private hangout for them, and we discuss some of our potential upcoming shows and what we're going to be doing. We take their ideas. I mean, we accept suggestions and feedback, and yeah, it's fun. Sometimes we just end up hanging out for a little while. Then on the 4th, we have a that's going to be at that's going to be at 3 p.m. Eastern. We have a show on organ donation. We haven't exactly titled it, but we have a really interesting guest. He is a recipient of 4 organs. And he is going to come help us bust some myths about organ donation and, dispel some of the most common misunderstandings. So that's going to be really cool. And then on the 5th, that's Wednesday, with Godless Cranium, we've got Goop and Netflix. We're going to be talking about what is their moral responsibility when it comes to platforming, a show from a company like Goop. And for those of you who don't know, Goop is a company owned by Gwyneth Paltrow that sells medical woo. They sell vaginal eggs, which are supposed to, fix all your hormones. They tell you to walk barefoot to cure things like insomnia and depression. They're an interesting company.
Yeah, and I mean I can speak from experience. Those vaginal eggs really just don't work as advertised. I don't know what you read the box. It doesn't.
Are you sure you used it as directed?
I do think there may have been some complications there now. Reflecting back on it, I think that's a possibility. That yeah, I'll you know what, the box wasn't specific, but I'm thinking I may have missed something.
Yeah, I think you might have missed something. Yeah.
There's a reason I have to keep getting up out of this chair. But at any rate, and then also for anybody who wants to, we will be doing an after show after this. Anyone who just wants to come hang out, you can hang out with us on the Discord and talk about this. But sort of just to reiterate, yes, there were missile strikes, rocket strikes that struck the embassy in the Green Zone in Iraq. It did come from a militia group. It was not from Iran. And we are not back on World War III. Please do not hashtag World War III. That hashtag is done. Let's bury that one for another couple of years at least.
No, hashtag plague.
Hashtag plague. Yeah, that's the next one. That's the next one. Oh, joy. So we look forward to seeing you guys. And then also, of course, Kobe Bryant and his daughter were killed along with 7 others when their helicopter crashed and killing all on board. So thank you very much for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you for a regularly scheduled program tomorrow. Thank you all.